In this video, I'm going to take you through the next part of your life processes photosynthesis topic. I'm going to give you some instructions for your work and also some teaching of the content. So in your last lesson, you should have completed page 1 of the photosynthesis booklet, and that was just looking at an introduction of photosynthesis, what that means, what the process represents, and a word equation to represent the process. We also looked at why photosynthesis is important for all life on Earth. So if you haven't already done so, please check your page 1 against the completed page 1. This is in your Teams files section, or you can just pause the video now and check your page 1. You want your answers, the gaps that you fill in, to be as accurate as possible so that you have an accurate set of notes at the end of this topic. Today we're going to start to have a look at a couple of these questions that are at the bottom of page 1. Remember, you don't have to write an answer to these questions. These are just prompts as to what is coming up in the topic and what we're going to cover. So today we're going to start to look at how does water enter the plant, and secondly, how does CO2 enter the plant. Water and CO2. CO2 is the formula for carbon dioxide. You can write that in if you would like to. So CO2, it should really be written C, capital O, and then a tiny 2. What that means is that it contains 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms, and that is the same as carbon dioxide. So you could write that into your notes if you want to. So carbon dioxide and water are the 2 chemicals that we need for photosynthesis to take place. This is a chemical reaction. So they need to enter the plant, and we're going to have a look at how they enter the plant in order for the plant to have these things for photosynthesis. So what I'd like you to do at this stage before we go any deeper into these questions is to give the worksheet on Microsoft Teams a go. So this is what the worksheet looks like. It's just simply called Photosynthesis Worksheet. You can do one of 2 things. You can print it off and complete it. You're just asked to label the boxes from the labels that are given to you in the top box up here. You're asked to put them in these in the relevant box, okay? And then don't forget the bullet points at the bottom, using red crayon or felt tip, blue and green to represent what the different arrows are. So to colour code that. The other thing you can do if you don't have a printer at home is to sketch this diagram. The back page of your booklet should be nearly all completely blank. So you can sketch this diagram and then add the labels to it, including the coloured arrows. But if you do that, you'll need to have a little key as to what colour represents what. So you might want to have at the side of your diagram, so red, you could put a red arrow, and you could say that is carbon dioxide. Okay, so if you sketch it out yourself, you will need a little key as to what colour represents what. So pause the video now and have a go at that worksheet. So we're going to take a closer look at, first of all, how water enters the plant. So up at the top, I've written the word equation for photosynthesis, which you should be trying to learn as you go along. It'll really help as we go through this topic. So we know that water is needed for photosynthesis, and we are having a look at how that enters the plant. We know that photosynthesis happens in the leaves of a plant. So somehow water has to get to the leaf. But hopefully you know that plants have roots. So again, we're back to my beautiful artwork. I hope you appreciate my lovely drawing. So I'm just drawing randomly some roots. You don't have to draw this into your notes, by the way. I'm drawing in some roots coming from the bottom of my plant. And the roots are in the soil, and the roots are responsible for taking water up from the soil. And then water will travel in through the roots, up the stem and into the leaf, if you can follow my blue arrows there. That's summarised in this statement here, which you might want to highlight. The plant obtains its water from the soil. It is absorbed by the roots and taken up by the stems to the leaves. So in your booklet on page 2, it refers to Spotlight Science, page 152. The picture on the left that you can see now is that picture. And then it asks you to compare with the mustard seeds which have been grown for you. We do grow mustard seeds in school, and we look at that in Form 1 in terms of what a plant needs for healthy growth. But on the right we have a picture of a mustard seed here, and hopefully you can see the little root hairs on the roots, and they are responsible for absorbing the water for the plant. What I would like you to do is to pause the video now. And in that space on the top half of page 2, I want you to try and draw this diagram. Keep it to the left-hand side of that space because we're going to draw a root hair cell on the right-hand side. So on the left-hand side, can you draw what you see here, particularly in the Spotlight Science diagram? So I want you to label your diagram as well. So you might want to draw a seed, or you can copy it from the picture on the right if you prefer, but I do want some labels. So you can draw the seed. Here you can see a young shoot, and you can see that has developed down below into a young root, and you can then label the root hairs as well. So pause the video, draw that diagram and label it, and keep it to the left hand side of that blank space. And then just below, just to point this out, you can see here this is a microscope image of the roots of a plant and the root hairs, and you can see the different cells up here, and these are the root hairs that are coming out, these root hairs, and we'll have a little look at the structure of a root hair cell and how it helps water absorption in a plant. So pause the video now and copy that diagram into your notes. So on the left hand side you should now have that diagram that you can see still on the page. If you haven't done so, please pause the video and finish that diagram off. So what we want to do now is to draw a root hair cell and show how they are specialised for the job they have to do. So you had a look at this in first year when you had a look at animal cells and how some cells are specialised for their jobs. Like in animals we have red blood cells, and we have nerve cells and different types of cells that are specialised for a job. In a plant, they have root hair cells, and you'll see that root hair cells are quite different than cells you find in the leaf. And that's because they've got a particular function. What is their job? What do you think their job is? Their job is to absorb water for the plant in order that the plant can have water for photosynthesis. So I wonder, can you remember the root hair cell from first form? If you can, pause the video now and try to draw the root hair cell and give it a go yourself. Draw it in pencil because all scientific diagrams should be drawn in pencil. So if you can, pause the video now and give that a go. But if you're not too sure, let me take you through it now. So you'll remember that a typical plant cell looks a bit like this. So you can see it there with its structures of the cell wall, the cell membrane, the nucleus, the cytoplasm, the vacuole and the chloroplast. You were recapping on that yesterday. But root hair cells look a little bit different. So here's the basic outline, and my diagram, as always, is not perfect. But you can see that rather than that standard rectangular shape, root hair cells look a bit different in that they have this long projection off to the side, this part here, which from a side view looks a bit like a side view of somebody's face with a very, very long nose. And that's what it looks like because it has these projections to give the cell a larger surface area to absorb as much water as possible. In other words, it's maximising the area that the root hair is in contact with the soil, so therefore it's going to be able to take more water into it. So this is just the basic outline of the root hair cell, and so you can label, you've got your cell wall. That's another thing that is specialised about a root hair cell, is that the cell wall is thin to allow for maximum water absorption. You've also got your cell membrane on the inside, so label that as well with your with a pencil. So it's cell membrane, MEMBRANE. Okay, inside your cell membrane, you have the contents of the cell. One of those things is a vacuole. And I've zoomed in just to make this a bit easier for me to draw and label. So the vacuole is filled with cell sap and it acts as a food store for the plant. And you can see it extends out into the projection as well. So the vacuole is in there, so you need to draw and label that. And then also we will have our nucleus, which you can draw outside the vacuole but inside the cell membrane. So be careful about your spelling of nucleus. It's Nucleus. And then we will have also between our vacuole and our cell membrane, our cytoplasm. And that's kind of the liquidy solution of the cell, and that's where all the chemical reactions of a cell take place. And you'll notice there's something missing that we normally expect in plant cells, and that is our chloroplasts. Root hair cells do not have chloroplasts. Can you think why that might be? Well, have a think about where the root hair cells are. They're underground, they're in the soil, and so therefore they can't capture any light from the sun. So root hair cells are not used for photosynthesis, so they don't need to have any chloroplasts because they cannot trap any light because they don't have access to sunlight. So there's no chloroplasts in a root hair cell. So draw that diagram in your notes, make sure it's labelled, and then off to the right hand side what we'll do is we'll have a think about how this root hair cell is specialised for its job. In other words, what adaptations does it have that makes it good at absorbing water? So number one is this long projection. So you can see that is quite almost strange at first look about a root hair cell, is this long projection. That provides a large surface area for the root hair cell to absorb as much water as possible. So remember, the job of the root hair cell is to absorb water. And so we're thinking about what special features does it have to make it good at that job. So first of all is the long projection to provide a large surface area to absorb water. And second of all, it has a thin wall, again, to help it absorb water. So those are the two specialised features it has to help it be good at its job of absorbing water. So that's how a plant gets its water for photosynthesis. It takes it up through the roots and then it travels up the stem to the leaves for photosynthesis. And we've had a look at the root hair cells. Maybe just label that underneath to make it clear that that's a diagram of your root hair cell. And we've had a look at how it is specialised for its job of absorbing water. And now we're going to take a quick look, and we'll look at this more next week. We're going to take a quick look at how a plant obtains carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. And carbon dioxide, its supply of carbon dioxide comes from the air. And actually air enters the leaf directly into the leaf, not through roots, not through the stem and then up to the leaf. It goes into the leaf through tiny pores on the surface called stomata. So I would highlight that sentence to make that really clear and make that stand out. Air enters the leaf through tiny pores in the surface of the leaf called stomata. And just to make a little note on that, stomata is the plural word for the pores on the leaf. If you're referring to one of them, it is just called a stoma. So it's one stoma is one tiny pore, but many stomata is many pores. So that's the plural word for it. What I'm going to show you now is a video of me carrying out this experiment. So this is something you would be doing in school if we were in normal circumstances in the lab. But for now, I'm going to demonstrate this practical to you. If you can, try and fill in details of what you see as you go along and answer that second question as well. Are there any differences between the upper and lower surfaces? So second form, we've been having a look at how plants get the different things that they need for photosynthesis. And in particular here, we're having a look at how it gets the carbon dioxide gas that it needs for photosynthesis. Because obviously if we look at a plant, we cannot see it taking in carbon dioxide or giving out any carbon dioxide. But what scientists have learned over the years is that carbon dioxide enters the leaf, enters the plant through the leaf. So we're going to do a really simple experiment to show that. What we're going to do is put a leaf into boiling water and see what we notice. So I've got my kettle boiled here. I'm just going to pour a bit of this into my beaker to make it easier to pour into my boiling tubes. Okay, you've got to be very careful when doing this because obviously the water is very, very hot. And I'm just going to pour it into one of my boiling tubes. Okay, I'm going to do this twice. I'm going to do it in another boiling tube to show you the top side of a leaf and the underside of a leaf. So hopefully that's roughly the same amount. And what I'm then going to do is just take a leaf off my plant and put it into the boiling water, and we'll see what we can notice. I'll try and pick two that are roughly the same size, and we'll go with this one. So what I'm going to do is get my tweezers or my forceps and put that into the boiling water. Okay, we'll push it down a wee bit further. Okay, and I'm going to choose another one that's a similar size and place it in the other boiling tube. Okay, and it will be very hard for you to see from there what I can see, so we're going to take a closer look now. So taking a closer look now, hopefully you can see these leaves a bit more clearly. They're placed in our boiling water. And what do you notice about the leaves, or what do you notice around the leaves? You can see more of them on the left, a hand boiling tube, but a few on the tip of the leaf on the right hand side. Hopefully you can see little air bubbles. Okay, you can see more on the one on the left. You can see those little bubbles, but a couple on the tip of the leaf in the right hand boiling tube. So what we can see from this experiment is that gases come in and out of the leaf in a plant, okay, and it comes in and out of the surface of the leaf, and that's how a leaf will get its carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, by passing in and out through the leaf. And that's because leaves have little pores. Those pores are called stomata, and they open and close to allow gases to pass in and out of the leaf. Now they're so tiny that we cannot see them just with our own eyes, but an experiment like this can show gases passing in and out of the leaf. But what we also want to look at is the difference between the top side and the bottom side of a leaf. So the leaf on the left, what you're viewing is the underside of the leaf, and the one on the right is the upper side of a leaf. Which do you notice more air bubbles on? Well, you can see there are far more, and I know it's hard for you to see in this video, but even look towards the top half of that, and I'll maybe try and spin it around. Can you see any more bubbles? You can see many more air bubbles on the underside of the leaf than you can on the top side of the leaf. And that's because the underside of the leaf will contain many more stomata than the top side of the leaf. And we'll look at an experiment to prove that in our next lesson. Some leaves don't have any stomata on the upper side of the leaf, and that's because the upper side of the leaf is actually thicker. It has a waxy layer to prevent water from being lost from a leaf, so the pores tend to be on the underside of the leaf. So using this simple experiment, we can prove that leaves have pores to allow gases to pass in and out of the leaf, and that there are more of those pores, those stomata, on the underside of the leaf compared to the top side of the leaf. So just to go back to page 2 before we finish up for this lesson, just to check that you've got the gaps filled in correctly, describe what you see. You should have said bubbles of gas on the surface of the leaf. And secondly, are there any differences between the upper and lower surfaces? You should have written that there are more bubbles on the lower surface and that some leaves have no stomata on the upper surface. Doesn't have to be word for word, but check that you have something along those lines for each of the gaps. So we'll finish up there. So we've done a brief introduction of how water and carbon dioxide enters the plant. We'll have a little bit more of a closer look at this idea of the pores, the stomata on a leaf in our next lesson.